Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. Today on the program, the Foreign Affairs Department expresses serious concern over the destruction of corals in Rozul Reef. A lawmaker wants better accountability on the use of confidential funds. And later, over 1,000 children allegedly abused by a cult in the mountains of Socorro in Surigao del Norte. Senator Risa Hontiveros tells us more live in the program. The Foreign Affairs Department expressed serious concern over the massive damage in the West Philippine Sea. The Coast Guard plans to further inspect the affected areas, this time with marine scientists. Tristan Nadalo has the details.
The Philippine Coast Guard shares its recent underwater survey footage showing extensive damage in the West Philippine Sea. These images of destruction were captured from August 9 to September 11 on the seabeds of Rozul Reef and Escoda Shoal. But the Coast Guard also observed something rather peculiar.
May mga nakadump na crushed corals, and seemingly parang nilinis siya muna bago siya dinump.
Rozul or Iroquois Reef can be found south of Rectobank, an area considered to be rich in oil and gas resources, while Escoda or Sabina Shoal is the main takeoff point for Philippine vessels during Ayungin resupplying missions. During the survey, close to 50 Chinese maritime militia ships have been spotted.
During this period, from 09 August to 11 September, wala naman tayong namataang other fishing vessels there, kundi Chinese maritime militia vessels lang.
But the Coast Guard says no direct link for now if these maritime militia vessels are the culprit in the massive destruction of the reef and the shoal.
If you're going to ask me kung meron ba tayong naaktuhan na Chinese maritime militia vessels na pinapatay nilang coral to whatever activities na ginagawa nila dyan, we don't have any. But in terms of circumstances, that's the only thing we are sure for now.
Maritime law expert J. Batong Bakal was not surprised over this discovery.
Since 2013 na na-discover natin siya, nag-accelerate talaga siya as a prelude to their reclamation activities on their artificial island.
He adds, apart from reclamation, the raw materials from the sea can be used in making jewelry. But the worst part is its possible impact on livelihood.
That area contributes up to 27 to 30% of our capture fishery. So that's going to be a huge blow on our food security.
Fishermen in Zambales have witnessed a number of destructive sea activities committed by foreigners in the West Philippine Sea.
Winawasak nila yung mga corals doon at kinukuha nila yung mga giant clam. At dahil dito, nasira na po yung paitlugan, tirahan ng ating mga isda.
The PCG says as much as they want consistent patrols in the West Philippine Sea, they only have limited resources. It's also not easy to disperse the number of militia vessels.
The only thing that we can do is to challenge their presence through radio, to document their presence, to tell them through radio as well, informing them that they're supposed to leave.
The PCG is setting up another patrol and underwater survey, but this time with marine biologists and scientists. Tristan Nadalo, CNN Philippines.
Senators also weighing in and want China to be held accountable. Amor Santos tells us more.
These are before and after photos of Escoda or Sabina Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. Senator Francis Tolentino says the corals are now badly crushed and the seabed discolored, resulting in a shoal far from what it used to be.
Ganito siya. Ngayon, si Escoda, dahil nagiba na yung ilalim niya, ganito na siya. Magkaiba yun, no? Oh, di ba? Yung discoloration, apekto na rin yun na nasa ilalim, hindi dahil sa waves.
The armed forces also saw massive destruction at Rozul or Iroquois Reef and suspects it was because of China's harvesting of corals. Tolentino, Vice Chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, says China cannot deny the presence of its militia vessels around Rozul and Escoda, which lie within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. He says it could be a prelude to China's reclamation activities.
Hindi ito ordinary na swarming lang, may ginagawa. may ginagawa. Merong patutunguhan.
Senate President Mig Zubiri expressed outrage, saying China sabotaged the Philippines' natural resources, a move that could result in food security issues.
Kung sisirain man nila yung mga coral reefs na yan at wanton harvest of our marine resources, I think that's foul. No? That is foul. At sana respetuhin po nila. Kung di po sila nagre-respeto sa ating arbitral ruling, at least irespeto naman po nila ang marine resources.
Zubiri appealed to the Chinese embassy to put a stop to the militia's destruction. Senate Committee on National Defense Chairman Jinggoy Estrada leaves it up to the executive. He says the Philippines could confront China, either President Marcos himself or through the DFA. But Senator Bato de la Rosa says even if China responds, we should take its explanation with a grain of salt.
Nakakalungkot, di nakakasawa, nakakalungkot dahil hindi na-actionan. It's just parang pag nagfa-file tayo ng diplomatic protest, almost every month, every 3 months, every 2 months, nagiging piece of paper na lang. Sabi mo, we cannot fight China. How can we?
That could be an option. That's the direction. Pero maniwala ka ba dyan? O wala tayo, sige na tayo, putis na putis, wala rin.
Senators agree China should pay damages. Tolentino says the Philippines can file a case before the Arbitral Tribunal, International Court of Justice, or International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. Zubiri says the Senate will push for a 600 million peso fund for the construction of marine ranger stations that will keep a close watch in the West Philippine Sea. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senate Deputy Minority Leader Risa Hontiveros. Senator, good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Ria. Good morning.
All right, Senator, let's get right to it. The Foreign Affairs Department there expressing serious concern over reports of massive coral destruction in Rozul Reef in the West Philippine Sea. We'd just like to get your reaction upon the discovery of this destructive activity.
Well, again, I'd like to thank the Armed Forces of the Philippines for alerting all of us, citizens and government, about this latest abuse by China of our West Philippine Sea and our exclusive economic zone. Hindi rin ito unang pagkakataon. Ria, you will recall that there was a time that I actually made a call for China to pay us a certain amount in damages because one of their vessels in the West Philippine Sea had crashed into a reef ecosystem. And there's really a way of computing the monetary value of such damaged or destroyed ecosystems. And nakakashock, no? Itong nakakita natin ngayong video courtesy, as you say, no, of the Philippine Coast Guard, na ubos yung marine life dyan. The reef system itself, and apparently the other marine species that make their home dyan sa ating bahura. So place this on top of the recent incidents in the past several years of water cannoning, our Philippine Coast Guard, of unveiling a naval gun on one of their ships facing a Philippine Coast Guard vessel on its way to Ayungin Shoal. That was in 2022. And then just this year, another incident of water cannoning and training their military-grade laser against Philippine Coast Guard vessels, temporarily blinding our personnel.
That's right.
At itong huli, kayo mismong mga media people, yung mga colleagues nyo sa media, nakasaksi with their own eyes, yung paghaharang ng Chinese maritime militia at Coast Guard nila being watched by the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, pagharang sa resupply mission ng ating Philippine Navy at Coast Guard sa Philippine Marines stationed on BRP Sierra Madre at Ayungin Shoal. So tuloy-tuloy na mga pang-aabuso na ginagawa ng China sa Pilipinas. And this environmental damage is just the latest. O wag nating kalimutan, no? They
Right.
have
Senator, speaking
China
of the
has dredged up
environmental
our seabed
damage,
to
po,
create
you mentioned
artificial
earlier
islands.
that there's a way to actually compute how much this damage, has cost the Philippines. How much has all these different incidents of damaging the natural resources in that area cost the Philippines so far?
We'll have to sum that up, Ria, but I'll return to my notes about how much yung pagsingil natin sa China for one of their vessels crashing into reefs. Similarly, in an earlier year, meron din tayong pagsingil sa United States dahil isa sa mga vessels niya ay bumangga sa reefs mismong sa Tubataha Reef. There's a pending bill now here at the Senate, the PENCAS bill, sponsored by Senator Loren, that will put into law, no, the equation that is used by marine scientific institutes around the world, published, and I remember at least one French marine scientific journal. Meron talagang paraan na isuma yan. So on top of what China owes the BIR, for example, in taxes, on the POGOs, and that's just on land, dito naman sa karagatan, medyo humahaba yung listahan ng utang ng China sa atin in terms of damaging or destroying or illegally harvesting, for example, giant clams in other parts of the West Philippine Sea, ang pagkakautang ng China sa atin.
Now, Senator, the Philippine Coast Guard and the armed forces are not directly accusing China of this massive coral harvesting, but they noted that this is the area where the Chinese militia vessels were spotted. You've said that the time may be ripe for an investigation. What type of investigation would that be, and when might that take place?
Well, as soon as the committee to which a resolution might be referred will schedule such a hearing. Again, that will be just the latest of the investigations na kinailangan namin sa Senado na gawin kaugnay ng mga aksyon ng China laban sa atin sa sarili nating exclusive economic zone at yun na nga sa West Philippine Sea. We will recall I recently delivered a privileged speech on that incident of the Chinese marine vessels playing cat and mouse or playing chicken with our vessels in the West Philippine Sea during recent resupply and even rotation missions at Ayungin Shoal for the BRP Sierra Madre. Talagang nakatawag ito ng pansin, Ria, ng hindi lang ng Senado, ng buong bansa. It's a greatly unifying issue among all Filipinos at nagbunsod niya ng panawagan na i-reinforce natin ang BRP Sierra Madre sa Ayungin Shoal to make it a more humanely habitable structure for the Philippine Navy Marines personnel there, para maging mas secure din siyang lugar para sa ating mga mangingisda who have also borne the brunt of Chinese harassment over the past several years. So tayo mga Pilipino, Ria, in the face of these incidents of harassment and threats and actual dangerous maneuvers at sea, hindi tayo umaatras. Lalo tayong nagkakaisa. And not only among ourselves, not only among us Filipinos, Ria, but a growing number of neighbors within the ASEAN and even beyond, among other naval powers.
It's not just an issue of national security, no?
Joint exercises.
Senator, it's also an issue of food security because you had maritime expert Jay Batong Bakal warning that if this coral harvesting isn't stopped, and if it's not prevented, it could lead to the collapse of the country's fishing sector and threaten our food security. I think he said it was 27 to 30% of our fish catch comes from this general area. Your thoughts on that?
Professor Jay is exactly right. As much as 1/3 of our fish catch, napakahalagang source ng iodine sa ating bansa comes from this very area. And this very area is part of the Sulu-Sulawesi Triangle, the center of marine biodiversity in the world. Yung mga mangingisda natin na inaagawan ng hanap buhay ng mga Chino, they are among the first lagi na nagsusumbong sa ating Philippine Coast Guard, Philippine Navy, yung Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources dahil nakikita nila kung paanong di makatarungang inaani ng China ang mga likas na yaman nating mga Pilipino. In addition to the food security, our energy security is also threatened by these aggressive actions of China. Dahil kung saan sila nagsuswarm, kung saan nasaksihan ng Philippine Navy at Philippine Coast Guard yung ganitong environmental destruction na probably ang China din ang gumawa dahil dyan sila nagsuswarm, dyan din yung malalaking deposits, Ria, ng oil at saka natural gas na dapat ang Pilipinas ang may eksklusibo o pangunahing karapatan na pakinabangan iyon. So there's really a lot at stake in these sovereign markers, as I like to call the BRP Sierra Madre, and such parts of the West Philippine Sea.
Senator,
It's
what
a
else
matter
can we do
not
in the
of
short
national
term?
pride, but survival.
Right. What else can we do in the short term, aside from the diplomatic protests and aside from conducting a probe? What can be done to stem these activities?
The diplomatic protests, Ria, remain an important part of our diplomatic and political arsenal to project and defend our national interests. Yung aming mga investigasyon sa Senado at yung recent na unanimously adopted Senate resolution expressing the sense of the Senate strongly condemning such actions of China in our territory and calling on government to take on even more and varied diplomatic and political actions at the UN General Assembly and in any and all other international fora. Napakahalaga din noon. In addition to that, I think joint naval exercises are already shaping up more and more between the Philippines and bilaterally a growing longer list of countries na kumakampi sa atin, sa ating arbitral ruling sa Hague, kumakampi sa atin para sa freedom of navigation at rule of law at sea, sang-ayon dun sa iniuutos ng UNCLOS. So we are harvesting not just more of our marine and energy resources in this area, but we are harvesting a wider and wider coalition. And I always say, a bigger coalition is a better coalition. Hindi tayo natatrap sa pagpili sa isang bansa lang o sa kabilang bansa. Hindi. We are at the center of a growing coalition of countries who want a rule-based solution and a peaceful and diplomatic solution sa mga tensyon dito sa ating karagatan.
All right, ma'am. With that, we will be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo, and our source today is Senate Deputy Minority Leader Risa Hontiveros. Senator, welcome back to the program. We continue our conversation now. I do want to talk about the Vice President and confidential funds. Following your colorful exchanges with Vice President Sara Duterte, do you still stand firm that her office should explain the 125 million confidential funds that it spent in December 2022?
Indeed, her office should explain because it's about her office. It's about the accountability of her office, not just to Congress, but most of all to the people. It's not about her alone, the way she's behaving. Dapat talagang ipaliwanag paano na ilipat yung 125 million na iyan mula sa Office of the President papunta sa OVP at saan-saan ginastos. Kasi kahit yung 2015 memorandum circular that she herself cited in the Senate budget hearings, kahit ayon doon, there's only a specific limited menu of items on which such confidential funds have been spent and could be spent moving forward dahil mas malaki pang hinihingi niya ngayon, 500 million for OVP and 125 million for the DepEd. Ang sa akin, Ria, intelligence is such a specialized, even niche profession na dapat iwan natin sa mga eksperto. So moving forward in the budget debates, hindi ko talaga bibitawan ito. And I'm counting, of course, primarily on my Senate Minority Leader, Sen Coco, but also, I believe, a slowly growing number of colleagues in the majority na bigyang daang muli yung gagawin naming mga proposed amendments to move these confidential funds of civilian agencies na wala namang totoong intelligence mandate or national security mandate, to move some of these sa line item budgets ng kanilang mga opisina o department, and to move the major part of these confidential funds dun sa mga totoong intelligence agencies, national security agencies, tulad ng Coast Guard na, my gosh, 10 million pesos pa rin lang a year ang intelligence fund nila. In spite of what we just discussed, Ria, the clear and present danger they are facing in the West Philippine Sea. Ilipat yung mga confidential funds ng mga civilian agencies tulad ng OVP sa Department of National Defense. Can you believe yung confidential funds na hinihingi ng OVP mas malaki pa sa confidential funds ng DND? O ilipat yung ganyang mga confidential funds sa intel funds ng NSC or ng NICA, yung mga totoong may pangunahing trabahong mag-generate ng intel para sa buong gobyerno natin.
Right. Now, on the part of Marikina Representative Stella Quimbo regarding that transfer from last year, she's saying that the fund transfer was perfectly legal, saying that the transfer was consistent with the chapters of the contingent fund and OVP budget under the National Expenditure Program. What's your reaction to that, Senator?
Unfortunately, Ria, dyan nagkakabuhol-buhol yung mga paliwanag nila. Nung una, sinabi, confidential funds ito na nilipat mula sa OP papunta sa OVP. So, when we cried foul, dahil wala namang dineklarang savings para dito ang OP at wala namang i-augment na line item budget sa OVP, they tried to say na yung category ng line item budget na yon ang siyang line item budget. But it's not so. Iba ang kategorya o ang titulo ng isang section dun sa line item budget sa section na yon. At dun sa line item budget ng confidential funds ng OVP for that year 2022, ang amount ay zero. Sa budgeting process, hindi ka pwedeng mag-augment ng isang zero line item budget. So, nag-iba yung tono nila. Galing daw sa contingent funds ng Office of the President. Pero kahit sa contingent funds, iinit ang mata ng Kongreso dyan, and we will really be pushing for more stringent transparency and accountability mechanisms over the contingent fund. Kasi you cannot play fast and free sa mga budgeting rules or budgeting laws. Lalo na't ang perang iyan ay ina-appropriate ng gobyerno, at higit dyan, ang perang iyan lahat ay galing sa buwis na ibinabayad ng mamamayan. So, ano ba talaga, kuya at ate? Iyan ba ay confidential funds na tinransfer mula savings to augment? O yan ba ay contingent funds na ni-release? Even their technical terms have to be specific, at kaya pa iba-iba din yung technical terms na ginagamit nila sa nangyari. Kung straightforward yan and kung above board yung nangyaring iyan, Ria, the explanation should have been as straightforward, easy and simple. Hindi yung parang ganitong namamaluktot talaga sila para sa balubaluktot na paliwanag.
All right, ma'am. With that, we need to take another short break. Do stay with us. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. Let's go back to our source today, Senate Deputy Minority Leader Risa Hontiveros. Senator, we only have a few minutes left. I do want to ask you about the Socorro cult. You filed a resolution to investigate the cult in Surigao del Norte. What is the most urgent concern? Kasi parang pelikula ang pinagdadaanan ng community dyan. So, tell us also kung paano nakarating sa inyo itong sitwasyon na to.
Well, actually, simpleng nag-reach out sa office ko ang mayor ng Socorro, Surigao del Norte, si Mayor Risa Tiggang. She had formed a task force together with her municipal DSWD to do the most urgent thing, Ria. Simply rescue these kids. 8 sa kanila ang nakatakas dun sa kanilang sitwasyon na they were being forced to marry. These are minors. They were being forced to marry adults, nire-rape, kinukulong sa mga kwarto, together with the adults in their community on Kapihan Mountain. They were being forced to render forced labor under pain of physical punishment. Itong 8 mga batang nakatakas, kinasuhan ng habeas corpus ng mga magulang nila, Ria, na nasa kamay pa ng kultong ito. And one of the kids has already been recovered. So yung 7, and these are ongoing habeas corpus cases, yung 7 talagang 3 of them gave their testimony on video. Pinakita ko sa privilege speech ko kahapon. They're calling on their kababata who are still with the cult to also escape dahil wala na daw silang kinabukasan daw, di sila makapag-aral, and they are really begging us, the public, to rescue them. Yun ang kung isa lang ang magagawa natin, Ria, yan yun, iligtas itong mga bata.
Senator, how many kids are there that still need to be rescued?
There are more than 1,000 children still in the hands of this Socorro Bayanihan Services Inc. Cult on Kapihan Mountain in Socorro, Surigao del Norte, out of a community of more than 3,000 people na pinasunod nitong si J. Renz, who styles himself as the reincarnation of the Messiah, Jesus. Santo Niño, he calls himself Señor Aguila. So more than 3,000 people. Of that number, more than 1,000 children. Lahat hindi pinapayagang mag-aral at sinasubject sa ganitong mga pang-aabuso, which are in violation of our expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, in violation of our anti-child marriage law, in violation of our raising the age of consent law. So terrible, these are continuing crimes at kailangan nating iligtas yung mga bata.
Right.
Sa ganito kapahamakan.
Right, as you said, Senator, extremely urgent, and we thank you for bringing this to light. We hope and pray for the best for those children still there. Ma'am, thank you so much for being on The Source.
Thank you so much.
That was Senator Risa
Maraming
Hontiveros.
salamat.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Ria Tanjuatco-Trillo. You're watching CNN Philippines.